Oh, man. On TV. No. Oh my goodness. So I literally got to pour milk on my head at least. No.
What are you using your phone right now?
No. Oh, now this looks good.
Another weekend of college football is in the books. Today's Monday, and you know what that means. Time to update the top 10 ranking. Let's go! Hey, good morning, it's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on LouTube today. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it also, and in addition to that as well. Hey, subscribe to this channel if you're not already. Did you know that I post college football videos almost every single day of the year? It's true. Some of them are even watchable. In fact, these top 10 videos have proven to be somewhat watchable over the years, judging by the comment section and the response that I typically get. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you do, share it with a friend. Don't be greedy with your Uncle Lou. Go knock on your neighbor's door. Make him watch. All right, we're going to do this the same way we've been doing it for years. Here's a look at the last top 10 ranking I did so we know sort of where I was starting when I sat down to re-rank the teams today. We're going to go 10 through 1 and give you my top 10. After I do the top 10, I'll put 11 through 25 up on the screen. Not going to talk about 11 through 25. I spend way too much time talking about 1 through 10. The video would be 3 days long if I did an actual top 25. So do the top 10 like normal, then I'll put up an 11 through 25 for everybody to see so you don't have to type in the comments, hey, who's your 11 through 25? All right, here's the last top 10 ranking I did for you guys to see. Again, no Big Ten, no Pac-12, none of the other teams that are not playing or have canceled or maybe about to play in October. Maybe we're hearing for the Big Ten. Anyway, until something is official with the Big Ten, I'm going to continue to leave them out of the polls. No disrespect to the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten is probably the second best conference of college football. But if they're not going to play, there's no sense in ranking them in a top 10 or a top 25, in my opinion. So until they make a decision and let us know when they're going to play, they won't be included in these polls, just like they weren't included in the last poll. All right, here we go. Time for the top 10. And clearly, there's not a whole lot of changes in this week's poll based on the last one I did, right? The SEC is not even playing yet. So you had some teams, of course, that didn't play this past weekend because of that. There is some movement, though. We did see some teams play, and I moved some teams up or down based on what I saw on Saturday. I also rearranged some of the teams that didn't play, maybe because one of the teams that did was better or worse than I thought. Also, we've had some players within the top 10 or within some teams in the top 10 that have opted out since the last time I did a video, and rosters matter. Let's start at number 10 and work the way down to 1. Now, number 10 may be a little controversial here, but if you're one of these people who thinks that there should be no preseason polls, and polls should only be based on-field play during the current season. In other words, it shouldn't matter what a team did last year or the year before, or who their coach is, or what their roster is, or what their recruiting rankings in, or what their schedule might be. None of that should matter. It only should matter what you've seen a team do during the current season. If you're one of those people, I don't think you can argue who I have at number 10. I've got Army. Army's 2-0. Not very many. How many teams can even say that at this point in the season, right? They're 2-0. They've got 2 blowout wins over teams that I would consider to be pretty good group of 5 teams. They beat Middle Tennessee State a couple of weeks ago, 42-0, and they beat Louisiana Monroe this past weekend, 37-7. Again, I get it. That's not great competition. I understand that. But they're 2-0. When you're playing a team that's not very good, the best you can do is go out and dominate them, right? Kansas State, Iowa State, Texas Tech. I mean, these are all teams, Kansas, these are all Power 5 teams that played teams that aren't very good. They didn't go out and dominate them. Army is dominating the opponents that are lined up in front of them. Now, they've got Cincinnati coming up here in a week or two. That'll be a true test for Army because Cincinnati is a really, really good team with a great head coach. That'll be a great game. Army beats Cincinnati. They could go undefeated. It could happen. It 100% could happen. But I've got Army at number 10. They're 2-0. Number 9 of the poll, I've got LSU. I'm not very high on LSU, and to be honest, the only reason I can think of to even have LSU at number 9 right now is based off of respect for what they did last year and the talent on their roster. They do have a talented roster, but they lost 15 or 16 starters off of last year's team. They've had multiple starters opt out of the season this season, including a starting defensive tackle and probably the best wide receiver in America in Jamar Chase. Their schedule is brutal because they play in the SEC West, and on top of that, all they're playing is SEC games this year, so 10 SEC games. I don't know that LSU will finish in the top 10. I'm trying to give LSU the respect they deserve, for what they did last year, but again, this ain't last year. Jack, you hear me, corn dog? This is this year. It's going to be rough for LSU this year. I've got them at number 9 in this poll. Number 8, I've got 1-0 Notre Dame, a home win over Duke this past Saturday, and if you watch some of the videos I made over the weekend, Uncle Lou was not overly impressed with what I saw out of Notre Dame. Do I think Notre Dame is going to lose 4 or 5 games? No, they're playing an ACC schedule. Until Notre Dame plays Clemson, they're not likely to be tested, not really all that much. And they shouldn't be. If you look at the talent, the roster, the teams, Notre Dame clearly better than everybody on their schedule except Clemson. That's the game everyone is waiting on. We'll see what happens when that game comes around. But they did beat Duke, struggled a little in the first half, pulled away some in the second half. Ian Book, to me, looked like a very average quarterback, which was disappointing. Ian Book is one of the most experienced and talented returning quarterbacks in all of the Power 5. Trevor Lawrence, you got a few others. Ian Book is not on that level, but he's in the next level of QBs in college football, in my opinion. He didn't really play like it this past Saturday. They did have a running back, Kyron Williams, I think his name is, that looked really, really good. Their defense looked pretty good. I expect Notre Dame to continue to roll up until that Clemson game, and we'll see what happens then. But right now, I've got them ranked at number 8. They have South Florida coming up next. Number 7 on the poll, second SEC team, I've got the Barn. I think the Barn's a pretty good team. You look at their recruiting classes, they're talented. Gus Malzahn, sort of up and down. At Auburn, a couple of really, really good years, a couple of just kind of okay years, a bad year or two. Year 2 with Bo Nix, they're expecting a lot of improvement there. I've got a ton of question marks about Auburn. Now, the questions don't necessarily mean that I think they're going to be bad. It just means I need to see Auburn play a game or two so I can learn more about what they might be this year. To me, they have issues along the offensive line, the defensive line, and at the running back position. I like Bo Nix. I do think he'll get better year 2. He's great with his legs. If his arm can improve, I think he'll do okay this year. They've got good wide receivers. I like their linebackers, and I even like their secondary. But they lost a ton of talent off their defensive line. They've recruited well there. We'll see if they're able to just sort of replace sort of next man up mentality there on the defensive line. In the offensive line, I've got some issues and some question marks there. Their leading returning rusher for this year, Boobie Whitlow, quit the team back in February, so it's all new running backs back there. Not here to try to convince anybody that Auburn's going to be bad, but just, again, some question marks that I need to see answered. And unfortunately, since the SEC is not playing for another couple of weeks, it's going to be a couple of weeks before those questions get answered. They kick things off at home on September 26th against Kentucky. At number 6, I've got Texas. A blowout win over UTEP this past weekend that impressed absolutely nobody. But, again, when you play a nobody, the best you can do is dominate them and blow them out. And that's what Texas did. Sam Ehlinger looked like the Sam Ehlinger from 2 seasons ago, as opposed to the trash can we saw playing quarterback last season. Texas defense played well. Everyone played well, really, with the exception of the running game. Texas didn't run the ball that well. Maybe they didn't need to. We'll see going forward as they move into Big 12 play here in a couple of weeks. But a blowout win, I've got them at number 6. Number 5, Florida. They didn't play this last weekend. Well, their football team didn't play. Their stadium played. Their stadium played a dumpster fire, and the stadium did end up winning. But it was close there for a while. But, of course, Florida Stadium did catch on fire this past weekend. The 3rd floor, the concourse area, some sort of maintenance truck with a dumpster on the back caught on fire. So, yes, Florida, a literal dumpster fire. I've got them at number 5. Kyle Trask returns his first offseason ending now, knowing he's the starting quarterback. This kid hasn't started up until last year since his 8th grade year in middle school. Sat behind De'Aaron King in high school, sat behind Felipe Franks at Florida. Felipe Franks got injured last year in Kentucky game. Kyle Trask comes in, leads them to a come-from-behind victory. The rest is history as far as what happened last year with Florida. Another team that is loaded talent-wise on both sides of the ball with some question marks. They haven't ran the ball great the last few years. Their defense seems to be pretty good year in and year out. Offensively, they got a lot of weapons at wide receiver. Will this be the year Dan Mullen can finally get it together? and win a division. He's been a coach in the SEC for 11 years, yet to win a division. Will 2020 be the year that he does it? A lot of people are picking Florida to win the East. We'll talk about why in just a second. I don't think it's crazy to think that Florida could win the East. It's going to be a weird year for obvious reasons. Coronavirus, how many players miss games, weird scheduling. Will we make it to the end of the year? All those questions will get answered eventually, but I do think Florida's a really, really good team. They open up on the road September 26th at Ole Miss. Initially, I had this as a game Florida was going to lose. Originally, this game was scheduled for the middle of the season. In fact, Florida was set to host LSU, I think in week 5, and then travel to Ole Miss in week 6. And I picked Florida to lose on the road at Ole Miss, mainly because it was following that LSU game. I picked Florida to win at home against LSU in a close, tough game, and then have a letdown the following week at Ole Miss. I do not think Florida will lose on the road at Ole Miss in week 1 with multiple weeks to prepare, but we'll see. I do think Ole Miss has some talent, and of course, they've got Lane Kiffin at coach. So buckle your seatbelt. Who knows what we might see out in the Grove. I got Florida up at number 5. Number 4, I've got UGA. Moved them down from 3 to 4. Why? Well, number 1, they didn't play. Number 2, lost starting quarterback. Georgia's got a lot of talented quarterbacks, but not a lot of them have very much experience, and none of them have any experience at UGA, right? JT Daniels, a year of experience at Southern Cal in 2018, a year in which, at least by the numbers, was not very impressive. 15 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, completed about 60% of his passes, and rushed for negative 140 yards, right? Dwan Mathis, true freshman last year, all the talent in the world, athletic, big, strong, has a cannon for an arm, had brain surgery last offseason and sat out all last year, so he's never played. And then you got the freshman Carson Beck. Of course, Jamie Newman was set to be the guy. He has opted out. He's gone. So 3 weeks before the season, you spend all offseason, Jamie Newman, committed to Georgia back in February or whatever it was when last season ended. You spend 6-7 months thinking you know who your starting quarterback is, and then 3 weeks before the season starts, the rug gets pulled out from under you. I do think that's an issue, a question, and a concern for UGA on the offensive side of the ball. Is 3 weeks enough time to prepare a new starter? We're going to find out. Whoever the starter ends up being is going to have a lot of talent around them. The offensive line is young and inexperienced, but extremely talented. All 4 and 5 stars, and 4 of them have experience from last season. Georgia had a lot of injuries along the offensive line last season, unfortunately. Sucked at the time. Turns out it's a benefit for this year, though, because even though you got 4 new starters, they all got experience. So we'll see. All but one. We may play a true freshman at right tackle. We'll see. Talent at wide receiver positions, and probably the best defense in America, Georgia, returns this year. They open things up on the road at Arkansas, but I think it's fair to drop Georgia from 3 to 4 when you look at Jamie Newman leaving, questions at quarterback and offensive line, and the number 3 team, Oklahoma, went out and absolutely throttled Missouri State. Again, I know it's Missouri State, but all you can do when you play a bad team is beat them, dominate them, and humiliate them. That's what Oklahoma did. This game was 40-something to nothing before I even knew what was happening. They took most of the starters out in the second half. Again, similar to Texas, Oklahoma did have a hard time running the ball. Will that bite them later in the year? I don't know. Oklahoma really, they're going to throw the ball and air it out anyway. Spencer Rattler looked amazing in his debut without having to run the ball at all. So maybe the answer to Oklahoma's rushing problems is to turn Spencer Rattler loose later in the year when Big 12 play kicks in. They didn't need that against Missouri State. I don't think he had any carries at all. He might have had 1. But his arm looked amazing. He had a ton of touchdowns. You know about their wide receivers. They've always got a good offensive line. Let me say something about Oklahoma's defense. Congratulations on your shutout. It's hard to shut anybody out, period. That is good. But this thing where all the Oklahoma fans are going around all over Facebook, Twitter, the mall, Walmart, the dollar store, stopping people in the aisle and bragging that Oklahoma has the number 1 scoring defense in America after 1 week in which half the teams that are playing this year didn't even play. The ones that did play played terrible teams like Missouri State. And you're bragging about having the number 1 scoring defense in America when you've had a defense for the last 5 years that can't stop a nosebleed is absolutely ridiculous. And honestly, it's potato just on its face. We need to see Oklahoma play some teams with a pulse before we accurately judge their defense. You don't get the benefit of the doubt defensively. You get it offensively, without question. I didn't need to watch Oklahoma play Missouri State to know this year that Oklahoma was going to have an amazing offense. They always have an amazing offense. Oklahoma fan will tell you that. I also didn't need to watch the game against Missouri State to figure out if Oklahoma was going to have a good defense this year or not. It doesn't tell me anything about Oklahoma's defense. Do I think Oklahoma's defense will be better than last year or the year before? Probably. Year 2 now with Alex Grinch, the new defensive coordinator, He's a different style of recruiting. He's trying to get a different type of player over there on the defensive side of the ball. Will that show dividends? Probably. But you got to remember, Oklahoma was 130th in America in defense 2 seasons ago. It's not that hard to improve on that. They've still got to get a lot better. And nothing I saw them do against Missouri State leads me to believe that they're ready to slow down an offense like Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, LSU, Auburn, Notre Dame, any team you want to name that they could potentially meet up with in a national title game. Or hell, even Texas for that matter. If Texas and Oklahoma were playing right now, the over-under would be about 100 points. No one believes in Oklahoma's defense. Number 2, I have Clemson, and I really thought about moving them to number 1. I just couldn't do it. And really, Clemson is 1B. Clemson and Alabama are the 2 best teams, in my opinion. I don't see an argument to be made for any other team. I think they're the 2 best teams in America. You want to put Clemson number 1, that's fine with me. I'm not going to argue with you. You could easily have Clemson number 1. They go out and beat a terrible Syracuse team this past weekend. Looked great in the first half, did not look good in the second half. Now, I know the starters came in, and that accounts for some of what we saw in the second half. But I believe they got outscored in the second half, Clemson did. And the Tater will tell you that their second and third stringers can beat any team in America. Well, apparently that's not true. They couldn't beat Wake Forest. But Clemson did look good. More importantly, Trevor Lawrence looked good. And before you say, well, it's just Syracuse, Clemson played about 5 Syracuses their first 5 games of the year last year. And Trevor Lawrence was very iffy. If you guys remember, he had a turnover problem, an interception problem at the beginning of last year. He corrected it around mid-season. Some people wondered, would he struggle again to start out this year? The answer is no. He looked amazing. 2 short rushing touchdowns, a passing touchdown, accurate with his throws, mobile in the pocket, command of the offense, everything you want to see from your quarterback. Trevor Lawrence looked like the real deal. This isn't a knock on Clemson. I had Clemson 2 last time. I kept them 2 now. And of course, I've got Alabama number 1. They open things up in a couple of weeks on the road at Missouri. Alabama, Mac Jones, or Bryce Young at quarterback, or both, probably both in the beginning of the season would be my guess. Everyone is waiting really on the Bama-Georgia game to see what happens there, although Georgia does have a test coming up before the Alabama game when they play Auburn. I think that's their second game. Georgia opens up at Arkansas. I believe they host Auburn the following week. I believe that's right. Host Auburn, host Tennessee, then go to Alabama, I believe is the way it goes. So Georgia's got a couple of tests before they get to Bama, but that's the game a lot of people are waiting on early in the season in the SEC schedule. But there it is. That's the top 10 poll. I'm going to end the video now. I'll put 11 through 25 up on the screen. You guys can argue about that in the comments section. I appreciate you watching, and have a good morning.